I sat alone at the petitioner's table with two binders stacked in front of me like bricks, their corners perfectly aligned. The courthouse smelled like old carpet, burnt coffee, and something faintly metallic, nerves maybe. My chair felt too small, too light, like it expected me to be temporary. Across the aisle, my father sprawled on the bench as if the courtroom belonged to him. Gordon Mercer had always taken up space that way. His laugh had been a weapon my entire life, loud, dismissive, designed to remind people who held power. Today, he tested it on me. Again, my brother Rhett sat beside him, back stiff, tie pulled too tight, eyes sliding away whenever I glanced over. He was the golden child, the one groomed to inherit. I was the one everyone tolerated and quietly expected to disappear. Their attorney stood when called, polished suit, polished grin, the kind of confidence that comes from assuming the ending is already written. He introduced himself smoothly, nodded to the judge, then glanced at me like I was a procedural inconvenience. When the judge asked if I had counsel, I stood. I'm representing myself, Your Honor. My father's laugh cracked through the room, sharp and delighted. The bailiff looked over. Gordon didn't care. She's too poor to hire a lawyer, my father announced, loud enough for the gallery to hear. A few people chuckled. The attorney's smirk widened, just slightly, like the verdict had already signed itself. My face burned, but my hands didn't shake. I opened the top binder, flipped to the yellow tabbed section, and waited. I waited while the attorney spoke confidently about deed transfers, about ownership, about how the house had been lawfully conveyed to Rhett. I waited until he said the words legally binding. Then I stood again. Your Honor, I said, steady. That transfer is voidable. The attorney turned, surprised, because my mother left a handwritten will. I continued, and under our probate statute, a holographic will controls distribution. A deed executed to sidestep probate cannot stand. The room stopped. Not figuratively, actually stopped. A cough froze halfway out of someone's chest. A pen hovered above paper and never landed. Rhett forgot to blink. My father's smile slid right off his face. Confusion crossed Gordon's features, then something tighter. Fear, wearing a thin mask of respect. The judge leaned forward. Continue, Miss Mercer. I nodded once. That silence didn't come out of nowhere. It was built, night after night, of being the afterthought in my own family. It started with my mother's house. I grew up in Bryer County, where last names opened doors. Gordon Mercer never let me forget I was second. Rhett was the heir. If Rhett failed, Dad called it learning. If I succeeded, Dad called it luck and waited for it to fade. I enlisted at 19 to get out. The Navy trained me to live inside evidence timelines, contradictions, documentation that didn't care who you were, briefs that left no room for arguing with reality. My mother was the only one who asked about my life. Then she died, and her house became the last place that still felt like her. I kept sending money for repairs, roof, heater, taxes, because it seemed right. Even when Dad never thanked me, Rhett chased deals, collected debts. When my aunt warned me they were selling Mom's place and transferring the deed to Rhett alone, I drove home and confronted them. Dad didn't flinch. Rhett needs it, he said. You're gone. When I mentioned Mom's handwritten will, he laughed. You think you have a say? That night, I stopped trying to win his approval. I requested every filing. Read probate statutes until dawn. I found an old property tax certification with my father's signature, clean, confident. On the new deed transfer, his name slanted differently. Rushed, forced. I printed Rhett's collection notices. Mrs. Klein gave me a notarized statement describing the signing, how Dad pushed for speed, how questions were brushed aside. Now, back in court, the opposing attorney tried to interrupt me. The judge lifted a hand. Let Miss Mercer finish. I placed the old tax form beside the deed. Same man, I said. Different signature. My father didn't laugh. The judge's eyes went to their attorney. Counsel, he said calmly, we'll take a brief recess in the hallway. There. Attorney leaned close to my father. I heard him clearly. You hid the handwritten will, he said. And you hid her transfers. Dad's lips flattened. Rhett rubbed his palms against his pants like he couldn't get clean. Back inside. The judge nodded at me. Miss Tessa Mercer, proceed. I handed up Mrs. Klein's notarized statement, the bank transfers, the tax form with my father's original signature. The judge laid them beside the deed. Eyes flicking between strokes, he turned to Rhett. These collection notices are accurate? Rhett swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. The judge exhaled once. This court is issuing an injunction, he said. No sale, no transfer, no encumbrance of the property until probate is complete. The handwritten will is admitted for determination. Both heirs retain equal standing. That was it. No gavel slam. No lecture. Just the law snapping shut around their plan. Rhett muttered a curse. The bailiff didn't need to move. Authority filled the room instead. Outside on the courthouse steps, cold air scrubbed the sweat from my skin. My father came out last. His shoulders looked heavier, his eyes unsure. Tessa, he said, like the name was new. You embarrass me in there. I stopped letting you embarrass me, I replied. His throat worked. Your mother always said you were the steady one. I'm keeping the house, I said. We'll settle Rhett's share through probate, but the place stays in the family the way she meant. Dad stared at the sky for a long beat. Then he nodded. I'm proud of you, he whispered, quiet, plain, and finally,